Inside Secrets, How Top Companies Manage Marketing Across Hundreds of Locations. We are excited about the local marketing research and insights that Ian Michiels, Principal Analyst and CEO at Gleanster, will be sharing with us today. First, I would like to introduce Candy O'Connor, Chief Operations Officer at DocuStar, our sponsor for today's webinar, who will give a brief overview about DocuStar and their local marketing solutions.
Thank you, and hello, everyone. DocuStar provides marketing management solutions and state-of-the-art production services designed to help businesses create and deliver communication that connects local consumers with national brands. Our core capabilities focus on solutions, systems, and print. These capabilities help marketing teams easily execute local marketing campaigns, including landing pages, customer events, loyalty campaigns, and much more. Our systems help streamline marketing workflow with software like marketing resource management, local marketing budget management, ad pre-approval systems, and much more. These systems are designed to make daily tasks like assigning and tracking co-op or MDF budgets, maintaining brand consistencies, ensuring compliance, and working with local sales channels easier and more effective. Our print capabilities take over 20 years of industry experience to help businesses and marketers better manage print, production, and postage costs. We work daily with clients to manage and plan print needs, from direct mail campaigns to in-store signage and so much more. This is also so they can reduce waste and save money. But the capability we are most proud of is the people that stand behind each of our systems and solutions. Our staff is dedicated to helping solve your marketing challenges and making sure our products and services deliver as promised, so you can focus on what matters most. You can learn more about our offerings at docustar.com. At this point, I will turn the presentation over to Gleanster's Ian Michiels. Ian has worked as an advisor to brand marketing executives at globally known brands, and today he will be presenting research findings that provide insights on how top companies manage marketing across hundreds of locations.
So today we're going to talk about best practices in managing a brand, a national or a global brand, where a corporate marketing entity kind of oversees that brand, but also a network of affiliates, hundreds, even thousands of local marketers. And I think what we really want to establish is what are the best practices for engaging a target audience in this type of environment. This is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. I actually spent many years as a consultant supporting brand marketing and marketing operations for large Fortune 100 organizations. So I've worked with CMOs and VPs of marketing to help kind of put together the roadmap, the technology roadmap, and the infrastructure needed to do this. And I can tell you, over the last 10 years, this landscape has changed dramatically. And you see one of the biggest challenges for marketers is just a general lack of education about the types of technologies that exist that can support this type of environment. So the first thing I think what we want to accomplish is looking at what does a successful brand marketing environment actually look like, and how do you benchmark where your organization is today. We're going to look at some of the top challenges, and I will explore kind of research data that we've collected, and then I'm going to go into top 10 tactics and recommendations that I've collected from top performing organizations and some of the data that supports those recommendations. So in the copy for this webinar, we said, we'll share insights from 500 brand marketers, but actually as I did the analysis and pulled together this deck, ended up using data from over 2,000. So we've got great data on our website and a ton of reports that really collected thousands of brand marketers' opinions and challenges and benchmark how they're doing in the market. So a very important tenet to our research is that we're not just an analyst giving you an opinion, but rather a real benchmark of what's going on in the market today. So we do surveys every year. We do 40, 50 surveys and collect responses from the market, from companies just like you, and maybe you've participated in our surveys. And then we have a methodology that allows us to isolate top performing organizations. Those are the top 25% of organizations that achieve the highest performance in a key set of metrics. And that's really what we explore as what is the current benchmark for best practice? What are companies doing that are successful? So I think the best way to visualize this how do you benchmark top performers? Well, we're really looking at the ones that achieve the highest performance in metrics like response rates and revenue growth and asset utilization in brand consistency. And then we're just looking at what they're doing differently. So in some respects, it's like a big pivot table when we do this analysis, but I'm going to reference top performers in this presentation. I just want to make sure it was really clear that those are organizations that are achieving superior performance, self-reported, by the way, in key metrics. So when you think about where are we going and how are we trying to get there, of course you want to replicate some of those best practices that these companies are engaged in. So let's talk about the nuances of a localized marketing environment versus marketing. And I think it's really important, we hypothetically could have marketers, any marketer on the presentation today who are looking at this, and I want to make sure that we differentiate. What we're really going to hone in on is an environment where you have a national or global brand, and corporate marketing obviously sees your target audience, and it's broad and wide, and lots of people can engage and buy from your brand. Those corporate marketers are challenged with multiple channels. Obviously, you have email and web and print and all these different areas that you're focused on, a variety of technologies that manage engagement, and then lots of suppliers. And so, from a broad setting, from a brand and establishing that consistent brand, they're focused on this larger audience. What I think gets more challenging when you talk about a local marketing environment is you also have affiliates and local stores and local marketers. And great examples of those industries would be financial services, insurance, where you have agents representing a brand, franchises, retail, where these folks are really targeting a tiny subset of that total market, and it's their livelihood is set on reaching that target audience and being very intimate with the needs of that audience. And unfortunately, they are also investing in technologies. They need autonomy and flexibility in how they can engage that audience. And you kind of amplify the challenges of that brand in this type of environment. So we're going to talk about some best practices here in this type of environment. So to start with, let's talk about the challenges. And this is a chart that's looking at CMOs in large enterprise organizations. So we're really very focused on larger organizations and just senior leaders in this specific chart. And we asked them, what are your top 2 challenges or priorities in 2015 with respect to your brand? Now, 5-10 years ago, you would see kind of more focus on revenue, on market share, on retaining customers, because we were in a difficult economy, and that was a very key focus. And I think what's interesting now is you're seeing this shift towards operational efficiency and cost savings. We've put off investments in efficiency in our back office, in supporting the brand and kind of supporting these local affiliates, and that's a huge focus area right now for these senior leaders. Embracing digital channels, still a huge challenge. Most of the organizations out there, if they're large and they've been around for 10, 20, or 30 years, they have grown on legacy traditional channels, and they have senior leaders who really respect those channels because it was the foundation for their growth. And that's not to say that print isn't just as relevant today as it was 5 years ago. It's just the dynamics of how you deliver an engaging customer experience have changed, and now you need to really personalize print, and you need to personalize that digital experience, and it all needs to work together. And then finally, from a senior leader perspective, visibility into marketing performance. And I think if you're not a senior leader and you're watching this presentation, then one of the things you need to think about is, how do we put the needs of our organization in the context that it can get funded by a senior leader that can get behind this? And so these are, when you focus on the areas that they're investing in, and they're keeping them up at night, that's really a key area to look at. So what are the challenges for local marketers? In a local setting, these guys are, oftentimes we call it, mom and pop marketing, where it's, it's the spouse marketing who's actually executing campaigns for a local franchise, or or they're very limited resources. So what do they need? Well, when they look at kind of what's challenging them, this is actually looking at top performers in that local setting. But visibility into campaign performance, a lot of campaigns going out, engaging the audience, don't necessarily know how they performed, and they're not optimizing off of that performance. Lack of expertise at a local level. They don't know about digital channels or the best practices or how to execute. So really rely on support from corporate marketing to get that done. But at the same time, if you're going to put your money out there and co-invest in these campaigns, or exclusively invest, you really want to make sure it's done accurately and effectively. Getting comfortable with emerging tactics and technologies, we'll cover some of that today. And then just a consistency of metrics. So, you really kind of look at this and you say, wow, a lot of these challenges are very operational in nature. We're not talking about kind of revenue growth and, you do get there, and we'll talk about that, but it's about cost savings, visibility into performance, orchestration of campaigns, metrics, templates and automation. And in that respect, I think that we have to kind of set a foundation of this notion of marketing operations. Now, this is a term that has been used for decades. It's not new, but I think it has been bastardized pretty poorly by the vendor community and the consulting community, just that, we all kind of adapt and use the term to the benefit of whatever offering we have, and I think it can be very confusing for a buyer who's looking at, and a buyer being, folks who are looking at solving this problem for a big brand. What's out there and how do I use it and how do I justify those investments? So a very simple definition of marketing operations, it is people and processes that transform budget and ideas into customer-facing communications to reinforce the brand and drive top-line revenue. So, ultimately it is the combination of people, process, and technology that support your go-to-market, kind of position and your messaging. And it's all the work that has to happen to get those communications out the door and then measure the effectiveness of those communications. So as I said, it has been an evolving concept, and if I look at, I oftentimes will look at Google Trends to see, were there spikes in this concept historically, and is that something we need to talk about? And I think what's really important in this chart, and this is just looking at marketing operations as a term over the last, 10 years. It hasn't gone away. It's kind of been very consistent that it's been out there. It's a key concept for businesses. But again, the challenge is, you kind of feel like Alice in Wonderland, Tweedledee and Tweedledummer. Everyone's telling you to go in different directions and defining marketing operations differently. And so understanding this and how you value marketing operations for your organization is critical for empowering your local marketing environment. You cannot get there without really understanding the technologies and processes that have to be implemented to do this effectively. So diving a bit deeper, to define marketing operations, it really is a discipline that embodies all the components of change. So when we talk about components of change, that's people, process, and technology. So from a people standpoint, it's a defined role. And you saw IDC publishing research back in 2007 about the growth in marketing operations and the use of that term in new titles. And on LinkedIn and on Monster and those job sites. It is definitely a role that people own, and they may have that term in their title. You'll also see folks who don't have marketing operations who are very much responsible for some of the nuances that we'll discuss today. So, and really in that context, if you are a marketing operations individual and that's your title, then you're focused on what are we doing? Why are we doing it? Are we effective at doing it? Did we accomplish what we said we were going to do in marketing? What is the process for getting it done and optimizing that? From a process standpoint, marketing is a value chain. I'm going to go into how I define that for an operations focus in marketing, but it's really about efficiency and productivity and collaboration and managing a very complex environment. Many suppliers, lots of local and global affiliates, and then that corporate brand and all the different nuances that go into supporting a consistent brand to the end customer, because they don't really care how your brand is supported. They don't care that you have local affiliates. What they care about is when I walk into a bank, I want the same messaging and a consistent brand as when I deal with or get campaigns from corporate. And then from a technology standpoint, a lot has changed. There's now kind of structure around how you deliver and execute repetitive tasks. Part of marketing operations is very repetitive. There are things that you do consistently to get campaigns out the door. So why you would make that a cumbersome manual process every time, it just doesn't make sense. So, kind of centralizing and gaining visibility into your operations process. There are lots of tools, lots of acronyms. I know they can be overwhelming. Marketing Resource Management, MRM, Marketing Operations Management, Enterprise Marketing Management. The end result, and I'll try to share a little bit about how I view the technology landscape, but is these technologies largely support you in different ways. And there's a new generation of technology, local marketing or distributed marketing platforms that really help you centralize this brand challenge specifically for a localized marketing environment. And I'll talk about the dynamics of how this landscape changed in a few slides. Oh, one last thing. The goal of this whole entire marketing operations process is to improve marketing efficiency and effectiveness. It's not just a productivity play. It is very much about executing more targeted, personalized, relevant campaigns to your target audience that are going to drive sales and drive, market share and everything. So, it's both sides of that equation, where traditionally when you look at technologies like digital asset management, that's largely an efficiency play. So, it's not, and what's really cool when we start to talk about this is when you look at justifying investments, you're not just looking at productivity and cost savings, you're also looking at revenue growth. So let's talk about this marketing value chain, and when I frame this for marketers, this is the process that marketing goes through at a very high level. You're planning, you're budgeting, and going through what are we going to do. Then you're executing or doing creative. Once you've determined here's our plan, then we're going to actually do the creative. So you have brand marketers that are heads down, cranking out campaigns and copy and graphics and things. Then you're actually going to execute that creative. So now you take what's been done and you're going to push it out through different channels, right? Through digital or through email or print. And then you want to measure the success of that engagement and hopefully turn that back around and use it for your next plan. So, this process, it has ramifications on collaboration between not just, within marketing, but other departments. You're integrating with finance and IT. It's a very complex environment that you're dealing with. Third-party suppliers, agencies and other vendors that you work with. That creates challenges with visibility. Do you know what's going on in the different stages? Can a CMO or a senior leader understand where they are in this process? And it also requires continuous optimization. You really have to be thinking about what are the processes that are in place so that I make sure when we measure how well that campaign did, it ends up back in our planning process so we can do something about it. Otherwise, you're just measuring for the sake of measuring. And then, really supporting this, a litany of different technologies and, the creative process itself. It is not one technology or a single platform that supports this. And so I think you have to accept that, lots of different solutions, including shared drives and email and, kind of what you wouldn't really consider as marketing-centric technologies are involved in this process, and that does create challenges with workflow and collaboration and how people are interacting. So when I would frame this challenge 10 years ago, and I would talk about this marketing operations concept and the technologies that support it, you kind of think about marketing is responsible for 4 areas. They're responsible for awareness, acquisition, retention, upselling, and then expansion. So how do you support all these different areas of marketing, and the strategy is different, right? Your acquisition campaigns are very different than your upselling and cross-selling to existing customers. Well, I think that you kind of think about this, the orange box, if that's marketing, back office marketing operations, this is everything that goes into creating a campaign. And so some of the tasks include, very manual tasks. Sometimes it's email interactions, it's reviews and approvals, it's connecting with finance and making sure the budget and the IT and making sure that assets are available and metadata is being captured on, your digital assets. But this is kind of the marketing management equation, the side where marketing has to manage what they're doing. And then what you actually create, again, for the customer, what gets the eyeballs, that's where you're engaging customers, and I think that's where solutions like email and marketing automation and search and paid search and all these different investments come into play. When you differentiate it in this way, it's a little bit simpler. I think what's happened now, though, in 2015, and maybe it started about 3 years ago, I would say, these lines are blurring, and the new generation of tools that are out there will empower you with both sides of this equation, the blue and the orange. And it's very powerful for a localized marketing environment because you can actually allow your local marketers to log into a centralized system where they can, engage with templates and have, a consistent brand presence that can be executed to their local target audience with the support of corporate marketing. I'll go into details on that in a minute. So I think 2 things hit hard and fast when I said this happened 2 or 3 years ago. And these didn't happen 2 or 3 years ago, but I think they had a huge impact on how marketers start to frame this challenge and the volume of investments we started to see in marketing operations. it spiked dramatically starting in about 2013. And when the economy was doing very poorly, it's easy for the brand and for corporate to say, hey, we're not going to put investments towards efficiency because we need to put our budget and make sure that we're growing revenue and we have shareholders that we have responsible for. But when you look at kind of what happened, well, with social media, with digital, consumers became very powerful, and they were interacting and they were sharing information, and the average brand marketer had a lot less influence. It wasn't like 30 years ago when you said buy Coke, everyone ran out and bought Coke. And so what happened is there was an explosion of channels. It was almost overwhelming for you as a marketer to think about, how do I engage with this customer who has a lot of power and is out there and has lots of preferences. And so relevance became very important in engaging those customers. And then the blending of offline and online, and they needed to support each other. The second thing that I think is very challenging for marketers is this technology landscape that supports marketing exploded. And this is from Chief Martech. I'm sure you've seen it. If you haven't, check it out. I don't know if there's a lot of value in all these logos, but it really does deliver a very compelling message, and that is that there are thousands of companies out there that want to help you as a marketer and want to sell you a solution. And so you have to prioritize your investments and figure out what makes sense, where do I put my money, and what's going to get me the biggest impact. So the other thing that happened is data became very fragmented. Most of these solutions are software as a service based. It's really easy to swipe a credit card and invest in a new technology. Local marketers are doing that. They have access to email tools and all kinds of different platforms. They can circumvent corporate, and that is happening in droves. And so you have these brand consistency challenges because local marketers are out there doing their own thing just to make their numbers. So then you get a lack of visibility, and all of these dynamics really had marketers and CMOs on edge saying, hey, I got to get control of this. It's just, and their shareholders and CEO are coming to marketing and the senior leaders in marketing and saying, I want to understand why we spent this much and what we got for what we spent in marketing. And that's a very tough conversation to have if you don't have visibility into some of these things. So I think what happened is you saw this kind of skew of the definition of marketing operations. And historically it would have been features and capabilities around planning and project management oriented, and workflows and approvals. And what's interesting, when we asked this question in 2014, late 2014, how do you define what are the features and capabilities you would expect to see in a marketing operations tool? A bunch of capabilities were included in the top 10 that were never part of a marketing operations tool. Things like web analytics and getting some data from how you're engaging customers, social media monitoring, email, content management, and web content management. And so this whole view of technology shifted. I know you probably can't see this, but what really happened, and let me grab the highlight tool here. Okay. What really happened is that you look at the traditional kind of corporate marketing setting, and this is for corporate, these MRM tools, the legacy MRM tools, were built for a centralized marketing environment. They had budgeting, planning, calendars, project management, digital asset management. But as soon as you kind of layer in this local affiliate area, a massive degree of customization was required to get these tools to behave in a way that supported local marketing. And so when I talk about the next generation of technology, it is really layering in new capabilities, and that are these orange boxes, and I'll go into these. I know you can't read them. Multi-channel, dynamic templates, so that corporate marketing can create a template that has locked features and brand compliant capabilities, but allow local marketers to customize those templates. MDF and co-op fund management, how you're actually investing in market development funds and pushing local marketers to spend on new areas like digital and social. So one of the ways to look at how the landscape is changing, and this is semi-accurate, but people often say to me, what's the difference between email marketing, marketing automation, and now you're talking about these tools called local marketing automation or distributed marketing. Not all tools have these capabilities, but I think one way to think about this from a marketing technology perspective is you probably already have email marketing, and sometimes local marketing tools, they will actually replicate some of those capabilities in a very different way. But I think these do build on each other, and when you look at what you're getting from this new generation of tool, it is very much, like I said, the blending of those two of marketing management and of customer engagement. And so what's very powerful about this is these local marketing tools are designed to make personalization scalable, ease of use, replicate best practices on emerging channels, and help local marketers engage in a way that they just can't with siloed technologies. And so it's really kind of, and they're also layering in the operational side, the automation of repetitive tasks and MDF management, and kind of that hybrid execution of campaigns. Could be print and online focus with a same consistent brand message. So when you think about what the difference is, yes, you probably are getting capabilities that are overlapping, but they're not. But the way these local marketing automation solutions are designed is to make these capabilities more scalable at a local level. So hundreds of affiliates can log into this system and engage corporate and be sending campaigns to their local target audience. That is just not possible, or it's very cumbersome to accomplish with these siloed solutions that are really more or less designed for a single core corporate marketing function. Okay, so let's get into some of these tactics and recommendations. And I think more than anything, I don't want to overwhelm you with stats. I've shared some stats today, but what I would try to tell you is I'm going to bubble up and give you the recommendation, and you can just trust that there are top performers and there's data that supports why I'm telling you these things. But when we think about what are some best practices for supporting this environment, it's pretty challenging. On the one hand, you have corporate and their need for brand consistency and their need for visibility, compliance, and sometimes governance, depending on the environment or industry that you're operating in. And then corporate generally wants to help. They want to help local marketers engage in different campaigns. So they're doing what they can, and oftentimes it's just not enough. And so on the local side of things, these guys have targets. They have a smaller target audience that they're trying to engage with. They need autonomy, they need flexibility, and in many respects help from corporate, and sometimes they don't get it or they don't get it fast enough and they're off doing their own thing. Mostly by design, they kind of have to, or they don't meet their targets. So when you think about how do you kind of balance this equation, usually it's not balanced, and I would encourage you to think about your own organization. Do you feel like local marketers have some autonomy but corporate also has some brand consistency? If you don't, I can tell you, I can almost guarantee you, there are fragmented technologies that are supporting manual, cumbersome processes that are supporting this back office focus, and you've got to get your arms around that. So I'm going to try to look at here what's the anatomy of a top performing brand. And when you look at the best companies in the world that are very effective at this, they spend kind of money in technology early. Usually they are early adopters of emerging tools. They are willing to do process reengineering, so not taking the legacy practices and processes that have worked and trying to make them faster. It doesn't work. You have to rethink the way your processes are operating if you're going to invest in new technology. And then the people themselves and some of the skills that they have. So what are they accomplishing for these efforts? Brand consistency, they're superior performers in revenue growth, market share, they're satisfied customers, and that's why they have the market share that they do. And then they're really good at customer experiences on a multi-channel level. So if these are things that you want to accomplish, then these recommendations are should be very helpful. The one thing I want to talk about right up front is something that is very difficult to measure, and that is kind of the skill set that is required to empower your organization as a marketing operations professional or as a brand marketer who wants to enable your organization for future growth and make sure that you're going to continue to scale. And so if I think about what are some of those skills in my own engagement with the best brand marketers that I've worked with, I think there's kind of 6 things that they really need to be embodying every day at work. And one is just being inquisitive. Do you ask questions? Do you want to know? Because it's really easy to get in the groove in marketing. And there are tasks that you have to do, especially in marketing operations. They're not the most. Sometimes they can be very repetitive, and sometimes they're not the most fun to do. Every time a campaign goes out the door, there's a process for people reviewing it, and sometimes that process isn't the most fun to engage in. And so being inquisitive and being able to say, hey, we can do this better, or why are we doing it this way, or how come they're asking for this data is very important. Metric-minded people I mean, I think you really need to desire more than just the creative side of marketing, and embrace the fact that we're moving to a world where, marketing is very much accountable, and you do what you can to measure where you can. You won't get everything, under the sun, and you won't always be able to justify the revenue that came from, all the different channels that you're driving out, but you can get close, and those discernible understanding of discernible trends is very important. You need to be collaborative. What I mean by that is not just in your own marketing department, but willing to kind of reach out to other stakeholders, to third-party suppliers and IT and finance, and say, hey, I'm thinking about changing this process, or let's talk about, how we can make your life a little easier when you're going and doing our budget, or when you're, embracing, new changes to technology. But also collaboration in your suppliers. I mean, a lot of times agencies have tremendous power in these big brands, and a lot of money is being spent. And so, sometimes you even need, surprisingly, buy-in from an agency, and the processes are going to change from their side. And so, thinking in that context. Accountability, I think that speaks for itself, just being willing to say, yeah, I will own this, and I'm going to, I don't think we're doing a good job, but I think we can do a better job. Being a champion for change, so actually taking action. A lot of times people, and when you do these marketing operations projects and you go in, typically we would interview 100 or 200 people in the marketing department. Everyone knows there are opportunities for improvement. Not everyone is doing something about it. So, a lot of times we say, oh, that's the way it is, and it's the way it's been for 10 years that I've been here, and, they just accept it. You can't do that anymore. It's not going to work. And your competitors who are not accepting the status quo are going to beat you in market share, and you'll find out very quickly that changes have to be made. And then finally, technology savvy. And I think you really need to understand the technology landscape and what technologies are available for you to improve and streamline some of these cumbersome and manual efforts that you're going through in marketing operations. All of this, of course, again, kind of balancing both sides of that equation, efficiency and effectiveness. So you're really looking at time, saving costs, and employee satisfaction. Just your own intrinsic desire to come to work every day, and your team's desire is really important. I mean, these are things that are going to happen in your organization, so you might as well improve them and make sure that people are happy and feeling heard and feeling like they are supported by the organization when they're in marketing, especially in this environment. Hundreds of marketers, in local and in corporate, supporting the brand. And then on the kind of revenue side of things, your brand consistency, and then you're looking at customer satisfaction and revenue. I mean, if you have customers that are getting 2-3 emails a day because corporate and local marketers are sending it to them, and they're different brand, I mean, that's not a fun experience. They're not going to stick around. And those are the types of kind of ways to frame this challenge and do something about it. Okay, so number 2 is to understand how to identify and prioritize these opportunities that I'm talking about. Where do you start? And this is a great example of an exercise that you can go through where you document your current state. And I know a lot of times when we would talk about this with brand marketers, especially senior leaders, they roll their eyes and they're like, oh my God, like I already know what happens. I don't need you to come in here and take 2 months to tell me what's going on. But you would be shocked at, as you start to look at what the actual process is to get, any given task done. Maybe it's a piece of collateral, or it's a brand, advertisement or something, what that process looks like. And what we're showing here is a swim lane approach where, let me grab my highlighter, where you look at all the different stakeholders that are involved. This is your marketing director, corporate marketing, finance, the agency, and the different stages that they get involved in this process. And there could be parallel things happening, but you will get a picture for where the bottlenecks are in your workflows, and you'll be able to quantify those. You'll be able to say, hey, there are people spending 7 hours every week on this one task. And, by the way, if we aggregate that up over 3 years, we're talking about millions of dollars, by the number of marketers that are out there doing it. So, the one thing I'll say is, as you approach this, your goal is to document current state, but then it's to frame the opportunity, not what's wrong. So, you know, you will never get funding if you come to them and say, this is all wrong and this is not good. And, I mean, everybody knows it's wrong, but the best way to approach this is to say, our opportunity and my recommendation to fix this, what I see here, is the following. That's what gets funded. And that is actually a picture of me on the lower right at Nike doing this exercise. And so you can see, like, you could actually put it, I don't know if you can see the picture, but you can actually, we'd put these huge pieces of paper on the wall and document this process with the team of marketers who were involved, and really help get our arms around what is it that we're looking at, how can technology help support this process, how can we save time, money, and improve this process. All right, let me clear this. So I think, you know, how do you make strategic investments in technology? Well, I think one of the really important areas to focus on is 10 or 15 years ago, there were big multi-million-dollar investments in marketing resource management. They didn't always pan out, and they were kind of an eat-the-world approach. So there were these massive kind of huge investments in consulting and systems integrators to come in and invest and put in these systems that look very much like and support the marketing department, just like CRM supports sales or ERP supports finance. The challenge was, you know, they didn't always do what they were intended to do, and they became very rigid and cumbersome for marketers, and they were sometimes slow. And so when you look at what's getting funded today, it's definitely more strategic investments. It's solving that one piece of the puzzle, that the low-hanging fruit, and then moving on to the next one. So from a kind of what we see in the market, things that tend to drive investments in technology, in marketing or brand marketing or marketing operations in localized settings are visibility. So the CMO saying, hey, how many campaigns went out? And I want you to include local affiliates. Can you tell me that number? And you know, I guarantee you most organizations can't. So getting visibility for that CMO across this whole process and just looking at performance can be a huge reason to implement or to justify an investment. Improving personalization, so response and revenue, could be a huge initiative. Most organizations are now focused on the customer experience, customer engagement, and they're trying to improve that. Operationalize digital channels. So just from an engagement standpoint, how can you help local marketers embrace digital channels? Maybe they're only sending email campaigns and they should be doing more around search or social, and so corporate marketing can help. Co-op and MDF fund management is another interesting area. It's kind of a niche focus for a lot of organizations, but it is low-hanging fruit. And if your process is being managed on spreadsheets and email back and forth, it can get a lot better by implementing a technology that centralizes it and has a workflow with approvals in it. So, and then finally, managed service offerings, just having that expertise from a vendor or a partner who can come in and say, I understand what you're going through. I know your industry. We do this a lot for your competitors. Let us help you implement a best practice approach here. And by the way, sometimes they can even manage it for you. So if your staff isn't in a position where you can take on all of this, there are actually solutions and services out there that not only help you embrace the technology, but will actually drive it forward for you. So you guys can focus on creative, on creating the campaigns, the strategy, and the messaging, and then push that stuff into a managed service to kind of get it done. Corporate control and local autonomy, you know, ease of use is really critical from a system standpoint. When you're dealing with local marketers, they don't have the time or experience or training or desire to learn a very complex system. So how easy the systems that they're interacting with actually are is important. And even though that's kind of a you know, an objective type thing, you know, it's important. Solve high priority low-hanging fruit. So prioritize all the investments that need to happen. Think about the areas where there's the most you know, cost savings opportunity or the most important strategic investment, and just go after those little tiny investments that you can make. So maybe it's a $30,000 or a $40,000 investment to invest in this one technology, and you can land and expand from there and start to solve some of your other challenges. But it's great because this milestone approach allows you to kind of justify that investment and move on to the next one. Top performers are very good at that. They don't do these broad kind of eat the world type investments in technology anymore. All right. How do you get funding? How do you justify or how are companies justifying investments in technology. And this chart is looking at B2C brands over $250 million in revenue. And we asked them, what are your top reasons for implementing technologies in marketing operations? And standardized repetitive marketing processes. Well, sure, we would expect to see that because we also saw, efficiency and cost savings as a key priority for CMOs. Streamlining workflow with internal stakeholders. There it is again, that the lack of kind of centralization and structure around workflows. And then optimizing marketing spend across channels, so that measurement side of things. I tell you, the other thing that, when you think about getting a project funded is to always back into, the decision makers who have budget, who can invest in your initiative. What are they being managed on? What is their, what are their MBOs, management by objectives? What are the things that their boss is saying, hey, these are the 3 things you need to accomplish this year. If you can back your initiative into hitting 2 or 3 of those, they're going to be more likely to talk to you and move things forward. And again, some of this stuff is public knowledge. If your organization publishes to shareholders in a report that they're going to focus on the customer experience and improve customer satisfaction, well, those are great great areas to attach your initiative to and talk about how investments in brand marketing can improve that area. What are some of the challenges that marketers are facing, that you might run into? Well, I've actually given you here the challenges that top performing organizations have said are their top challenges. And this is a very different view of the market, because these are organizations that have a propensity to invest in technology, that really understand what they're doing. And so when they talk about their challenges, this is what you may expect after you've done your process reengineering and invested in technology. So top 2 I think are important to talk about: organizational culture and employee training. I mean, these are ongoing challenges, and if you invest in a technology and you think you're going to flip the switch and walk away from it and it's just going to generate this huge return, you're sadly mistaken. So it is an area where it's not a lot of work, but you do have to kind of on an ongoing basis check and see, hey, are marketers logging in and using the system? Are there issues? Are there things that we can tweak and fix for them to make life easier? And so especially in a very large and complex environment like a local marketing setting where affiliates are also involved, it's really important to get feedback and just make sure that the culture values what's going into these systems, that if you ask them for data, it's being used on reports. Otherwise, don't ask them. If you're not going to use the data, stop asking for it, because it's a waste of everyone's time. So, and then you kind of see the funding and prioritization against other initiatives. Even top performers struggle with that. So, worry not. Every organization is likely to struggle with some of these areas, but these guys actually went on and championed the initiative and got stuff pulled forward, these top performing organizations. So that's important. Dependence on legacy systems, I think you need to plan to divest of legacy systems after you invest in new technology. So you don't want marketers, they're very creative folks. The minute something doesn't work, they will find a way around it. They will circumvent new technologies if those legacy systems are available. So you got to remove that. How do you get the most out of the systems? Well, I'm just going to talk about the top 2, but system ease of use is very important these days, especially in a local marketing setting. Giving these guys really complex, robust technologies is not going to work. And so you really saw, and that's why I think this generation of the old generation of legacy MRM didn't work so well in this environment. It just wasn't something that marketers were willing to log in and use, and it required a great deal of training and was pretty robust from a capability standpoint. You don't necessarily need that in a local setting. Good enough is the ability to kind of opt into campaigns and have corporate manage them, or just simple executions with their local target audience. Integration with other systems is actually really important. When you think about measurement and optimization and understanding the process, that's going to be critical. Developing a roadmap with milestones. So, challenge those legacy processes. Don't just move them to a new system. You really, as I said, document that current state. But then as you kind of do this in a phased approach, so that you're not trying to tackle everything at once. And I guess what I would say here is business requirements and functional requirements are different. Your business requirements are what you need to accomplish as a business. Your functional requirements are how you're going to accomplish that with the technology. So, I mean, you should know those differences, because there are lots of different ways to to manage a business requirement, right? Lots of different technologies can support that, and the vendors will say, yep, we can do that, but you really want to make sure you have your arms around that. And then top performers are really, really effective at, an 82% invest in a phased rollout and a roadmap approach, where they actually build a vision and a future state for marketing, and here's our current processes, this is where we're going, these are the investments we need to make, and that's where you go out and get funding for those phased approaches. And what's nice about that is when you're just investing in small pieces of it, you have a win to go to and say, hey, that worked really well, look at how effective this was, it did what we needed to accomplish, can I have some more money to go focus on this area? This idea that you can templatize, and that's not a word, I know that, but all these different channels that you're trying to engage in, and you've got emails and landing pages and print to worry about, and all these different areas. These new technologies will actually allow you to create a corporate managed brand asset. It's a locked template where some elements of the brand can't be edited, but actually allow local marketers to go in and maybe change a paragraph or change a picture to different ethnicities, depending on the demographic that they're targeting. This is huge because it gives you kind of a consistent brand, but it allows for local marketers to have some autonomy. Now we see 79% of top performers deploy these brand compliant templates. So this is I don't know that there's a direct correlation, but I would tell you it is definitely contributing to top performing execution. And that's not just over print, it's also over email, landing pages, all kinds of different areas. And so, I think that's huge. The last thing you want is local marketers going out and investing in their own technologies. So be thinking about how you can kind of automate and create templates for customizing content. It's a different notion. How do you prioritize investments by your highest potential return on investment? And I guess I use an inverted pyramid because I think there are more opportunities to automate and optimize repetitive tasks in marketing. That's your efficiency side of things. They can be a little bit more difficult to justify because you have marketers or you have senior leaders and budget holders who may say, I want to see the return on that. And yes, you can see the return by looking at how much time, and what's the cost of inefficiency for your organization, and what could your resources be doing if they weren't spending 2 times more time than they had to on long cycle times and workflows and approvals that just go off into rat holes and end up nowhere, finding assets, things like that. And then as you move down the continuum, you're looking at how do you improve collaboration and communication with finance, IT, your agencies, your local affiliates, and the communication lines with them, all the way down to financial accountability and linking attribution and performance, which is challenging, but I think there are fewer opportunities to do that. So if you're going to think about how do I prioritize my efforts here, there's going to be more low-hanging fruit on the top end of the spectrum, more on the efficiency side. Tips on hiring new resources. You'll get a copy of this deck after the presentation, so I won't go into this in detail, but I think there are skills that you need to think about supporting in your marketing operations group, and I think top performers are very good at hiring and retaining talent in these areas. And on the y-axis we have social skills, and I don't mean social media, I mean kind of the emotional quotient, the EQ. Do they understand people? Do they understand the customer? Are they really intimately invested in the emotional side of the brand? And then your analytical skills, and so you kind of have that spectrum of people who are really good at the numbers but maybe don't understand the customer so much and aren't so good at selling or the emotional side. And so the 4 types of resources, and one person can sit in all of these boxes, and so you can kind of figure out where are the holes in your organization. But on the low side of low social skills, low analytics, those are reactive resources. They're the ones who are process oriented, they're tactical, they're executing campaigns for you, they do the same process consistently, and they get campaigns out the door. They don't do much more. They're the doers. They're not necessarily comfortable with change because they invest heavily in the current state of affairs, and they just get it done. Then you have analytical resources that kind of sit next to them. They're jazzed by the numbers. They're inquisitive. They're detail-oriented. Those are folks you really want. The great way to identify who are your analytical people, they're relentless at follow-up. They constantly are on the ball, asking questions, contacting you, trying to understand, hey, what's going on? Where are we in this process? Did you do what you said you were going to do in time? Those are very important resources in the marketing operations setting because you're going to rely on them to not just measure the campaign effectiveness, but the effectiveness of your processes. And then on the proactive side, those are people who wield tremendous influence internally. They have people skills. They're challenging the status quo. They understand the art as well as the science of it. And I think they're the ones that need to be more tech savvy, because they're going to go champion that initiative moving forward and build the relationships that get it funded. And then I think leaders need to embody all of these areas. So you kind of need to think about, do you have holes in your organization in this kind of structure? Understanding change management. There's a concept that we used to use in consulting called the valley of despair. And when you roll out a technology, inevitably everyone's very excited, right? You deploy the technology and they say, wow, this is great. But after, when it goes live, they're open to it. And then sometimes over a period of months, if you don't manage that rollout, you get this valley of despair where people kind of drop off and they're a little bit reluctant, and maybe something didn't work and they're not willing to give it a chance. And the point I'm trying to make here is, you need to learn, as a marketer, you need to learn about change management. You need to learn how how to engage your constituents and your stakeholders and your peers to help them embrace this technology, because it can be managed. And a lot of consultants have services around this offering. The 4 things I would say that kind of make this effective: one is constant communication, capturing feedback at all levels. No surprises in decision making. You shouldn't be making decisions and then everyone in the organization is like, what the heck just happened? I didn't know that was going to happen. Poor communication in that respect. And then make them fun. Brand your initiatives. You're in marketing, so put a name on your initiative. Give people mouse pads or pens with the name of that initiative. Get them invested in rolling out that technology. How do you champion change, and how do you get funding? I mean, you are one of many different initiatives that need to get funding. So there's this totem pole, and sometimes marketing ends up at the bottom of the totem pole. I already said this, but align your outcome and your metrics to current externally committed targets for the business. So if there are kind of things that they've communicated to shareholders, link it to that. Aggregate those current stat inefficiencies over a period of years and the number of resources. If you can actually quantify, we have 100 people spending 20,000 hours a year on this process, and we could completely eliminate it. That's hundreds of thousands of dollars in savings, up to millions over a period of years. So that in and of itself can justify technology investments. Definitely plan to divest of legacy systems. Understand it's about risk, and if you can mitigate that risk for your stakeholders, you're going to manage the organization better. Don't try to sell the Big Bang approach. We definitely talked about that. And then finally, this is a quote from Leonardo. Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. When you kind of think about process, you really want to standardize and execute, kind of a templatized and automated approach. So are you measuring the effectiveness of assets? Are people using them? Are they downloading these templates that you're creating and actually using them? Measuring engagement, optimize measuring, and to optimize messaging. Are you looking at customer satisfaction? So I think some of these different capabilities are really important to centralize in one system, because it's a lot easier to measure. Otherwise, it's kind of chaos. I don't think you need to go after one-to-one personalization. It's not necessarily a requirement. It's great if you can get there easily, but another way to think about this is just micro-targeting, to go after a larger segment, maybe by industry or company size or role or income bracket for a particular target audience. That's kind of more palatable, and it's more easy to execute for local marketers. Fund small initiatives first and plan to invest later. So again, that simplicity side of things. All right, my final thought, and then I'll wrap up for some questions and answers. We've got about 5 minutes left. I think there's definitely remains a massive shortage in talent that really understands the skills that I just talked about in this presentation. I mean, we only had 60 minutes. There's so much more to cover. And if all I do is pique your interest and get you thinking about, hey, I need to learn a little bit more about change management, or I need to learn about, funding initiatives and justifying them, you are so valuable to your organization, because most marketers don't have a clue. And I can say that with confidence, because I've been there in person and I've surveyed and kind of collected all this data from the market. And this change and kind of what we talked about as the new dynamics of marketing and the buyers being in control and new channels, it's inevitable. You're going to end up getting there, and you're going to either get there because your organization is failing miserably and your competitors are kicking your butt and you have to change, or you're just plain going to fail. And so, I don't think it's a matter of if or but when, and so you as a marketer are just more valuable, and you will go farther in your career. I've seen many CMOs move to organizations because they had experience funding and investing in these types of marketing operations initiatives. They get it. They understand that the structure has to be in place for them to be effective as CMOs, and there's just plain no excuse for not doing it. So, I think whether you're at the bottom and you're kind of working your way up, aspirations to be a senior leader in marketing, when you come to the table with these skills, you are so valuable to your senior leaders, and you will get noticed. So I think that's really important.
And at this point, we are out of time. Thank you, Ian, for providing us with practical recommendations for managing marketing at the local area. As those of you in attendance work to improve your local marketing operations and execute the insights you received today, please consider partnering with DocuStar. Every day, DocuStar's people work with marketing professionals to make their jobs easier, their days more productive, and their businesses more successful. This concludes today's presentation. Thank you.